I'm Bieler, and I'm originally from Austria in Europe, and I'm from Graz. And I currently live in Arizona at the Garchen Buddhist Institute, working as Garchen Rinpoche's personal translator, and also the lamas that visit the Garchen Institute in Arizona. I've been translating 7 years now for Garchen Rinpoche. Well, I was always interested in Tibetan Buddhism for a very long time, and I was looking for like someone to teach, a teacher, and I met Garchen Rinpoche, at the Kala Chakra in Graz, where I'm from. So he came to visit to attend that, and then I happened to meet him because I was his driver at that time, one of the volunteers, and I was really made a really good connection with Garchen Rinpoche, and I wanted to become a nun and follow him, his center, his practice. And then Rinpoche said that, for now it would be better and more helpful if I would go learn Tibetan. And so then I said, then I go learn Tibetan, and his translator then, he recommended a school in India, and that's where I applied the LRCDP, the Lhotsapa Rinchen Sangpo Translator Program in Dharamsala by Lama Zopa Rinpoche. And a few months later I started the school and began to study, really with the intention to be able to follow Rinpoche and become a translator. I was translating for a few years actually for Garchen Rinpoche before I heard of the translation project that is about to launch, the 84,000 and the Kangyur translation. And I felt very interested because the Kangyur is the words of the Buddha, and that's really the foundation of Buddhism, of the Buddhist teachings, is the actual words of the Buddha. And it seems that for anyone to be a Buddhist and to study Buddhism is really important to know your actual, our teacher, the Buddha Shakyamuni, and his teachings that came from his mouth, in this world, and that really sets the beginning and also the foundation of Buddhism. And I felt that this is really a very important thing to do. And if we were to translate the Kangyur into other languages, then in the future we would lay another foundation, so it also continues to exist in the Western world, and in future generations, even Western students would have the opportunity to know what the Buddha Shakyamuni actually said. And I just think that this is actually, of all the Buddhist texts that exist, the most fundamental and most important text, I think, to preserve and to translate. So I've just translated one of the Kangyur texts now, that the Sutra of the Purification of Karmic Obscuration Sutra, which was actually really a very nice text, even a very exciting and really beautiful story. And also the way the Buddha explained the teachings in this text was really extraordinary. And I feel that this text even included, although it's a Mahayana text, it really shows the entire view of Buddhism. I feel it's nothing that is missing from all aspects, and so I found that really a very beautiful story. When I get the text, when I begin to translate, first I try to read the text and get my understanding, and I learned that it's more helpful to actually see the whole story, even if we don't understand everything right away, but really get an understanding of the story. So that's what I'm doing now. I'm reading the whole story, and then I'm going through everything with the lamas that I'm working with. And I think that's really important, actually, because even if I'm sure, and that's another thing I've learned, is that even if I'm sure I understand and I don't have a question about this point, it's still it's still very helpful, because you always get different, even deeper understandings. So I feel it's really important if you translate that, even if you're very confident of your knowledge, that you translate with lamas, who have the knowledge and also the realization, and who give you even deeper insight into the meaning, you know, that goes beyond something that you maybe know. So I'll go with them through the whole thing and clarify things. And then if there are some parts that we both are unsure, then go to the next Lama and another Lama, and also ask Rinpoche, you know, for the real meaning of that, like that, especially the teaching part of the sutra, like to really understand, because it's important to really to understand as much as you can, not only academically, but really understand. And then I translate, and I kind of divide it in chapters, even if there's no chapters, and then I send the first draft of. But actually, I translate twice, so there's 2 drafts, and then after complete the second draft and with editing, I send it to the editor. And then while the editor edits, I continue the second chapter, translating the same way. And she sends it back to me, and I revise, and then clarify questions, or make phone calls, and send to the proofreader. Then she sends back to me, and then I go through it again. And so basically all the points must be clarified. So whatever that takes. I mean, definitely the time calculation. I didn't. It's very tedious. Very tedious. I was more before that. I was more used to translate many sadhanas, which I actually find much easier to translate than the sutras. I found that it's really almost essential that you have some understanding of the culture, and not the culture, but how it was at that time, and especially the language, the Sanskrit. Even if you don't see it, even if it doesn't exist, you can. It's like you're putting a Tibetan over it, and you can see it through. It really comes through. It definitely comes through. And if you don't understand Sanskrit, or even at least the grammar, the grammatical structures, it's very hard to sometimes understand, because the sentence structure sometimes is not proper Tibetan language sentence structure. For the most part it is, but not always. And if you don't know Sanskrit grammar, and then it is confusing sometimes, and then you don't know, because Tibetan is a particle language, a syllabic language, so you, depending on where you put the particle, like the Latin and so on, it makes a big difference in the meaning. It changes the meaning completely. And so, because the Sanskrit doesn't have that, it's an inflected language and not a syllabic language, so you don't have particles. If you put the words according to the sentence structure in the Sanskrit, then the particle ends up anywhere in the sentence. So if you don't know that, then the Tibetan, there could be mistakes, I think. So it inspired me to start studying Sanskrit, actually, and I did start studying Sanskrit now, which I find is already been so very helpful. In the sutras, there is so much speech fillers. Like he said, and he offered these words, and then he spoke, and actually, basically, the Buddha spoke. So if you don't know, you read all these lines, and sometimes you feel like there's so much there, so much information. And also, I find the verses more difficult than the prose. Because also to put something into English verse is very different style than the Tibetan verse form. The Tibetan poetry is completely different, and then even more so the Sanskrit. So to put that in a way that it doesn't sound like something that's a new creation, it still sounds original. I found that a little bit challenging. And then also doing the sutra, the comparison between different editions. I found that sometimes the spelling of various words is different, which really changes the meaning. Like I had this word sok, which could mean and so on, or it could mean a person, a being, it could mean life force. And if you add this other word before it, it could even mean together with that attachment. So there were so many different ways of putting it, and it could have all made. You could have made a case for each of them, So I ask so many lamas and I get so many answers, you know. And I think it's probably also because it's a story, you know. It's like a drama, you know, and there's a teaching in the drama. You know, it's like a really exciting story, and you're waiting what comes next, you know. And stories are always more difficult, I think, as a translator, because for stories you need to really understand the point, you know. And in order to understand the point, you must understand the culture and all the background, the cultural background, the time, you know, the place. There's so many things that have to come together to really understand a story.